welcome to RPG Book Club LongCast, the podcast where we play an itty-bitty bit of a biggie big video game and talk about how it makes us feel. I am Sam Allman.
I'm David Bernard Houck.
And I'm Maddie Grace Webben.
And today we will be discussing the stuff that happens.
Part 6.
Part miscellaneous.
Yes.
Story Quest 5 and other stuff.
Yes. The everything else that has to happen before we get to the final chapter.
That's the way to put it.
We're discussing part complete underutilization of one of the best characters in the series.
That's right. I was going to say, because Sam mentioned things that have to happen. I was like, yeah, we're going to be talking about, basically, fulfilling necessary preconditions for history to advance, basically.
Yes.
Yes.
But before we get to all of that, we are going to do a top 3 this week. Our top 3 thing this week is top 3 sections, basically top 3 disc 3s, where everything slows down and you just have to do some stuff.
Basically, there's a lot of times in video games, I think I'm thinking of wording it differently might be more helpful. There's a lot of times in video games where it's like, hey, you're almost done with the game, but wait, we want to pad out the content, so go do a bunch of bullshit it's required, but we're just sort of making you go around. This takes many forms. It happens in almost every genre of video game. Sometimes it sucks, but sometimes it's good.
Yeah. The example one, this is going to be one where we're all just going to name them. They might be good, they might be bad. So it's a top *3. But to kick us off is the most famous one, the one so bad that Nintendo nerfed the shit out of it. In Wind Waker, instead of having a couple more dungeons like a regular Zelda game, you instead go dig up an ass ton of Triforce shards, and you just kind of just got to go do all the side quests in the world and hope they're all Triforce side quests, because if you're not following a guide, you have no idea if it's a heart piece or a Triforce. So you just gotta.
Can I make a quick pitch about why this is good? Actually,
sure.
So, in that game, first of all, that game is heavy on vibes. Okay, if you're not a big supporter, if you're not a big believer in the importance of vibes to video games, you're not gonna like Wind Waker anyway. It's dungeon design, everything about it is generally not the best any 3D Zelda game's done. There's usually another 3D Zelda game that does it better. But the graphics are beautiful, and the vibes are wonderful, and the sailing is great. And it's how much do you enjoy being in this beautiful, lighthearted, but also drenched in melancholy, sort of sun-dappled world, and paying attention to it. So they definitely were supposed to have more gameplay and just needed to come up with something else. But what the game encourages you to do by giving you these treasure maps and being here's a vague outline of some shapes, it's saying, how much have you been paying attention? How much do you love this game's world? Remember that island that you went to that you really liked? I bet you probably remember the basic silhouette of it, right? If so, you'll recognize this. So it encourages you to either make use of or go back and reinforce your connection to the game's world. That's the main thing, is most of the time these quest chains are intended to try and give you a more deep connection to the game's world, especially for people who, I don't know, are just trying to blast through to get the capital C content. And this is maybe not the greatest example ever of it. It's definitely done in a bit of a clunky fashion, but I think it works. And it's by far the most famous example of this concept.
Yeah, and I think that the redone version in HD is all of the rough edges have been sanded off. I think it's still enough of the go out and vibe, but some of the shitty ones, stuck behind the bingo game, those are gone. So it's more of just the vibe part and not the bullshit you got to do.
I have a really good one that I bet Bernard will actually agree is good too. Drakengard 3. Drakengard 3, actually pretty much every Yoko Taro game does this. Nier does it too. 100%ing the game is required to a lot of games are here's how much you play to beat the story. Here's how you 100% it. Yoko Taro games, those are always the same thing, which is funny. So but Drac 3 and Nier both do the same thing where you can't get the true ending of the game or whatever unless you collect like every weapon in the game. So that's usually the kind of stuff that only like gamers who want to like get the platinum trophy would bother with, right? So but in Drac 3, basically after you get to the game's ending, 100%ing it requires replaying levels, collecting all the weapons, but in so doing, you end up, it's not like Nier 1 or Nier 2 where you replay the entire game or the entire half of the game, but now things are different. It's like you play alternate scenarios versions of all these little parts of the game. And it's all tied up in this weird, like, an archivist whose job is like weaving together the different threads of time and like discovering different offshoots of the timeline. So you're just jumping along and watching weird alternate versions of all kinds of different scenes, and it eventually builds into a totally amazing new final ending and stuff like that. But it definitely still does count though, because there is a decent chunk of it where it's like, yeah, you missed a chest in this level and you didn't get the one sword, so there's no extra plot attached to this. Go do it, right? So it's a combination of a lot of that bullshit with also a lot of like, no, also there's new shit. It's really cool and well done. Though I think it counts actually for this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Man, I don't remember much about Drakengard 3 except that I loved it, and then like years later I saw that most people don't like it, and I was like, what?
Dumb. Ridiculous.
I have a joke one for when you've got to do a bunch of shit before there's plot. Approximately hour 3 to hour 65 of Dragon Quest VII.
In a sense, it is that is the entire game, but on the other hand, it's like, that's the point of the game. You know, the point of the game is the individual little side quests. But you're right, though, that technically it's like, there's this overall plot, and it does not develop until you completed, like, 30 little individual episodes.
Mm-hmm. I also have a serious one, which I haven't played this game recently enough to remember if it's good or bad, but it certainly is one of these, and I might be playing this game again soon so I can develop a new opinion of it then. The hot and cold card keys in Metal Gear Solid.
Oh god, it's a little bit of a funny thing whether or not it counts, because it doesn't really take that long at all, but it feels like it takes so long, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So Sam, I'll just go ahead and spoil it. This is really dumb. Metal Gear Solid, like every Metal Gear game, is full of all kinds of cute little gameplay tricks and little like, hey, we thought of a cool idea, let's just throw it in there. Towards the end of the game, you get a key. You need the key to accomplish something very, very, very important. And at this point, it's the end of the game. The tension's very high, right? You're totally invested. You're totally in it. The stakes could not be higher. The time could not be shorter. You put in the key, and it's like, oh, you actually need 3 keys. And it's like, we only have 1 key. And it turns out the key is made of a special alloy that transforms. So you have to backtrack somewhere that's really hot and then go back and put in the hot key. Then you got to go backtrack again to somewhere really cold and then forward track and put in the cold key. Fun fact, this idea was ripped from Metal Gear 2, in which case it takes a lot longer.
That's
I need to play Metal Gear 2.
Metal Gear 2, you're backtracking to like the beginning of the fucking game. Whereas MGS 1, you're backtracking like 1 building previous or something like that. It's like you're not going back as far. But yeah, it doesn't take that long objectively, but holy shit, the plot grinds to a standstill.
That's ridiculous. I love it. So here's another one that's phenomenally good, and it's another one where it's only this if you squint. But the second half of Kingdom Hearts 2, because as you remember, the plot is they go and you do all the Disney stuff, and you play through the plot of all of the Disney movies, and then you go and you have this big like showdown where nothing new happens, and they're just like, lol, I don't know, just go back to all the Disney worlds and maybe you'll find the organization. And so the whole hunt for the organization is just happens because you got to go do them again. and look harder this time.
I'll say this still counts, and the reason it counts isn't conceptually, because conceptually putting all the real, having a front and back half of the game where the whole back half is repeating everything, but now it's different and fucked up. Great idea. But if I recall, actually tell me if I'm right or wrong here, most of the back halves are like really undercooked. Like it's not like, oh, you did a whole story with Little Mermaid, well now here's the sequel, like a chapter 2 of the narrative. It's like, no, you go back there and you do 5 little things, and then there's a plot with some guys.
Yeah, that's almost every single one of them. Like
the fact that they're so underbaked is why it counts.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast. You go there the first time. There's like a dungeon, and you have 2 halves of the castle you go to, and you go and you talk to Belle, and you go and you talk
it's a whole
to Beast.
narrative arc.
You do all this thing. The second one, you go in and Beast is sad, and you ask Belle, why is he sad? And she's like, that guy on the bridge, and you go and you fight the guy on the bridge, and that's the whole second return to Beauty and the Beast. So it definitely counts.
I have a sort of weird conceptual one for my third one. The third case of every Ace Attorney game.
Yeah.
Because the third case is actually really important. There's never, I don't want to say never, because there's like 8 of these games or something, but the third case generally doesn't have any connection to the overall plot of the game, in the overall plot of the trilogy or duology or whatever. But it's always really important for developing the character of the prosecutor, because like in the second case, the prosecutor for the game is introduced. Then in the third case is when you like really, the prosecutor really does their thing. And then usually in the final case, there's a new prosecutor or something's different or something. So third case of every Ace Attorney game.
And it can't be stressed that most of the third cases are weird, and like just even without the, it's important because you have to get used to the thing. It's like, that's the clown one. That's
There's a circus, you know, it's going to show up in the third case.
Yep. I got another one that is, it's funny. We wanted to talk about a certain trope in this thing, but Sam discovered a sub trope by talking about the Kingdom Hearts thing, right? So I thought of another example of the sub trope, where you basically have like what's supposed to be like a part 1 and part 2 of a story, but part 2 is usually underbaked. Mass Effect 2. If you recall, Mass Effect 2, every character when you first meet them, they have this whole little narrative. Mass Effect 2 is a game entirely made of side quests. You have the opening set of quests and the final quest. In the middle, it's just go round up a bunch of allies. And each one is their own really exciting story. You meet each character. It's almost like Persona, like 4 or 5, right? You go through a little narrative with this character, and at the end, they join your party. That's the first half of the game. Back half of the game is do that all again with this thing called loyalty missions. Each character has a thing. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them are super underbaked. It's like, hey, remember how when you first met me, I kept talking about how my backstory was like how I wanted revenge on this guy? Well, what if we went and got revenge on this guy? And then you do. And maybe they find out that revenge isn't all it's cracked up to be. I don't know how I'm describing an actual one. I'm just vibing, right?
What's his name? Jacob. His loyalty mission is so stupid.
Yeah, I remember finding most of them underwhelming. It's very funny. I can criticize that game for a million years, and it's still my favorite game in the series overall, and I think it's fantastic.
I mean, what else is going to be your favorite game in the series? Mass Effect 1? Mass Effect 3?
Yeah, but yeah, no, that's it's an interesting little sub trope, right? Of a game that is games that are made of episodes that then have little sequel episodes because this is a video game and we put money into making all these assets, and by damned if we're not going to use them again to get 10 extra hours of gameplay.
Is that 9?
I think I've mentioned 2 only. I have one easy one. It's actually bad. I know it's weird that I'm saying that I don't like something. Metroid Prime 2. 1 does this as well. 1 and 2 both do it, but it's like, hey, it's the end of the game. You want to get in the final dungeon. You got to collect the 13 doohickeys. And what it usually does is it gives you a bunch of like really like cryptic riddles about where to find them. The problem is that in Metroid Prime 2, which goes along with this game's vibe, I guess. They're way too hard, and while I rarely want to criticize anything for being way too hard, I think it's out of step with the rest of the game. The rest of the game is difficult in a game mechanical sense. It's like enemies hit hard, you die a lot. It's a kind of brutal game compared to the first one, which is smooth as silk. But it's not a game that's hard in the sense of like super paying close attention. It's not like a puzzle solving game. It's not a riddle solving game, right? So blasting you with that at the end just doesn't work at all. Though, you know, there's obviously a charm to it.
I thought of one that is a fun inverse of this.
Okay.
Most Pokemon games, you're playing the game, you're battling the gyms, you're getting to the Elite Four, you're super pumped, but then a bunch of really bad plot happens, like around the 7th gym.
It's the reverse.
And the gameplay grinds to a halt, and you have to deal with a bunch of plot that you don't want to deal with. You have to deal with Team Flare for 3 hours.
That's really fucking funny.
My favorite one, it loops around to being good though. So, in Pokemon Black and White, you finish the Elite Four, you're ready to go and face the champion. That's what always happens. But the bad guy crashes his dungeon into the Elite Four, and you have to go and do the dungeon before you can fight the champion and beat the game.
That one rules.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love the crap out of Black and White.
You know what's funny?
It's so good.
It's funny. The whole premise of this bit was that we were talking about a common trope in games, and almost everyone we just talked about was a weird subversion that barely counts. But that's because all the ones that there's a million other examples of this. They're all just so boring that we didn't bother talking about them.
Or we probably forgot about them.
Well, this is very common in like Western AAA games, like open world games. It's like
most of the game.
Well, yeah, but specifically though, at the end, it often is like go to each area and do one little mini quest and collect a fucking thing, right? Like it's so common. And also, we didn't talk about the most egregious one, which is Final Fantasy VII. I maintain that if it was not presented as this, it would be fine because everything you do in this segment of the game is fantastic. It's just that you're thinking, can we get on with the plot now?
Yeah. The Final Fantasy VII, I literally laughed at my desk at Blizzard when they're like, what do we do? And Sid walks forward is like, I don't know. Should we go and like talk to my wife for a little bit? And everyone's like, yeah, I fucking guess. And I'm like, that's the key plot cutscene is Sid walking up and being like, I don't know. Let's just go to my hometown.
If the game gave you a better motivation for the things that you're doing, we would not be having this conversation. It's all context, which is very important in narratives.
So that's 11.
Yeah, let's talk about the one that happens in Final Fantasy XIII 3 Lightning Returns. Right after this brief break where we listen to some kick-ass music from Final Fantasy XIII 3 Lightning Returns.
Alright, so Final Fantasy Part 13, Part 3, Part 6. Gaiden. When we last left... So, just to back up, if you recall, this game has 5 main quests. We have 1 of them left. However, the game also has a progression of days. Now, when I first started playing this game, I was like, oh my god, we really got to make sure we don't run out of time. Well, the guides were like, it's fine, seriously, don't worry about it. And I was like, really? Because, like, time's progressing. That's just because we were in the first town where it's hard to find enemies that give you a lot of EP. Yeah, no. Here's the thing. I finished all 5 main story quests in this game by the end of, like, day 5 or 6 out of 13. Turns out that's a problem. You know why? At the end of each day, very important plot cutscenes happen. So, one of my complaints this whole game so far has been this game, I don't really have a grasp on what it's saying thematically. The plot's just a little bit weak. That's because I've been playing the game so efficiently and doing like 20 quests all in one game day that I had not progressed the game's internal clock, and that's where all the good shit happens. So my experience of the game has been 5 entire, complete 95% of the game's actual content while thinking, man, the overall plot's kind of weak. And then watch all those cutscenes that I hadn't been watching because I was too good at the game and realize, oh, this is where all the plot was hiding. So those are the two things we're going to talk about today. Okay? And yeah, you'll find that the second thing we talk about today actually contextualizes the first thing we talk about today. That makes it a lot less bad. So, when we last left our heroine, she had just had this whole thing with Caius and Yule where she kind of didn't actually save either of them because they're just too sad. It was actually really neat. But I don't want to keep talking about it. We can talk about it later if we feel like in our wrap-up episode. So we only have one major quest left, and I bet it has something to do with a goofy, big-haired dad whom we heard was hanging out in the Wildlands. Going to find him is quest 5-1, but we can't get there without a flying chocobo, which means quest 5-1 branches off of quest 3-3, which maybe this is boring, but I just find that really odd and funny. This game continues to do weird structural stuff the rest of today's episode. So this quest is pretty easy and short, but it doesn't have any other prerequisites. So technically you can do it any time, but it makes sense to do it last. So, we head over on Poppy, which is the name of my chocobo, to a downed airship. But it seems to be someone's home now. Inside it's Saz. He's sad. Leave us alone, he says. His usual lightheartedness is nowhere to be seen. Dodge is asleep in some sort of coma-like state and has been for 500 years. Turns out his soul is no longer in his body. Saz has a little thing called I accidentally wrote, I was trying to write Saz, and I wrote Zaxh. Zax has a little thing called a soul coffer. If he can collect enough soul fragments, not the same thing as soul seeds, which are a different thing in this game, but specifically fragments of Daj's soul, it'll bring Daj back. Turns out he got it from Lumina.
These games were about fighting oppressive governments and shit like that. Now we're searching for soul pieces.
Buddy, it still is. Oh yeah, my lack of having a silent read on this game, that's gone. So anyway, he got it from Lumina, which I'm sure is normal. Saz tells us to leave him alone, but of course we're gonna help. Outside, a blue baby chocobo leads us to a chest which has a soul fragment. Cool, that was easy. Fragment of mischief. Lumina shows up, and we and Lightning are like, ugh, typical. And we talk, whatever. Here's the thing. This quest keeps doing this thing where Lumina just says things that seem vaguely mysterious and threatening, suggesting that something is wrong, something's up with this, there's some mean trick being played. I'll spoil it. There isn't. It's weird. So yeah, she's like, yeah, I'm the one who gave him the soul coffer, and she's like, and Lightning's like, you would do that. What are you up to? And she's like, nothing. I just want to help Dodge. Wink, wink, wink. I just care so much. And we're like, sure. So anyway, then a not diegetic dialogue help box. At no point this does not happen in dialogue. It shows up purely in a help box. It says, hey, you got to go get the 5 soul fragments. Here's where all of them are. You already, and yes, it involves going and doing things you've already done in the game, or maybe you've already done. So the first one is one we just got. The next 4 are 1, talk to Chocolina. 2, talk to those soul seed traders. 3, defeat a cactare in the Dead Dunes. 4, something about the Yusnan slaughterhouse. So this is where the structure falls apart a little bit. All of these things actually have important quests associated with them. So it's not just like you go talk to Chocolina and she literally gives you a thing. However, I had already completed, I think, literally every single one already. Except for, well, I hadn't defeated the cactus, or at least I'm sorry, but I had the soul seeds. So, I think I just missed some cutscenes here, dead ass. So I had to kind of reconstruct it via YouTube videos and stuff. So we go and I think I literally just, I already completed the item she was going to ask me to get. So I missed that. okay. So when we talk to Chocolina, she's like, "Hi, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you're here." And then she says that she's really concerned about Saz and Dodge. She knows about this stuff already for some reason. And we're like, okay. And then she says she really wants to help us. And then she goes and explains everything we just heard about how we got to collect 5 fragments, where each one is, the fact that there's a thing called a soul coffer. Lightning acts like this is new information, but it's true that half of it was delivered to us non-diegetically by a dialogue help box. So I guess we knew it, but Lightning didn't. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, she's like, yeah, I already found one of the fragments. It's called the Smile Fragment, but I can't just give it to you because it's not like a quote-unquote physical quote-unquote object. It's some kind of gaming abstraction. So because she can't just hand the thing to us that she has to put a quest up on her quest board, and then we complete the quest and then get it, which I guess is kind of a funny way to, like, how do you give a character a gaming abstraction? You put it in one of the game's mechanics, aka the quest board, right? Which is also gaming abstractions. Like, hey, if I can beat a quest which somehow manages to get me an extra inventory slot, I can also defeat a quest that gets me a piece of a boy's soul, which doesn't exist in the real world. Whatever. The quest she makes you get is to go get an item, but again, I'd already gotten the item, so I don't even know. I think it's just an item that was laying on the ground somewhere. The end. Cool, that's one down. Next is the Soul Seed Traders. If you recall, the Soul Seed people, there's one in each town. They wear big, goofy wizard hats, and every time you buy them, they're like, yes, I will buy the soul seeds. I am totally upstanding. Nothing mysterious going on with me. This definitely isn't some weird plot thing that'll come up later, and it's actually very sinister. Yes, give me all the soul seeds. Spoiler alert, no, it never comes up later. They're not foreshadowing anything. As far as I know, though I'm pretty sure I'm right about this one. Turns out that they have one as well, but they need a quest as well. They need a Moogle fragment. So the stuff that we all already talked about, like 1 or 2 episodes ago, about how it turns out there's a whole Moogle village in this city and all this shit associated with it. Yeah, that's actually mandatory. We just didn't realize. So it's this complex web of mandatory optional side quests. So if you're like me, you've already done this. Yeah, you want this thing? Here, I already have it. You're welcome, right? So next is to defeat a cactuar in the Dead Dunes. It's a special cactuar that has Saz hair. It's funny. It's also harder than regular cactuar. This also technically has a quest associated with it, but the quest is literally just, there's a tornado in the way, you need another Crucius crystal. Mm-hmm. We probably already have an extra one because the game gives you more than you need during the actual quest that involves Crucius crystals.
Way more.
Yeah, you need like 5 to do the quest. We have like 10. We use it on the tornado. That's it. And then you kill the thing and you get it. And then the final one is the Usnan Slaughterhouse. This is literally just, you go to the battle arena and there's a special battle. And if you do that, the reward is a soul fragment. That's it. Very boring quest, making you do stuff you may have already been doing. I will say, though, Lumina does show up in 2 places. Now, this is actually, some of this is a little bit interesting. So after these on Slaughterhouse, Lumina shows up and is like, I just really, again, she's being mysterious and we're like, fuck off. And she's like, man, I really hope you complete this quest because I really want to make Saz happy again. And we're like, sure you do. And she's like, no, I've been stopping by his house like regularly for the last 500 years to check up on him. Where have you been? And it's like, oh, we were a crystal. But then she's like, no, I've been working really hard. I mean, I even put in all the effort to get him the Coffer of Souls. Lightning, continuing the foreshadowing, says, how do we even know the Coffer of Souls works? What if it's one of your tricks? If this is all a lie, if you're just lying to him, it would crush him even more. And then she kind of like disappears. After beating the Dead Dunes one, we now finally have, or I think this is whichever one is the last one. After you get the last one, Lumina shows up and she's like, cool, you have all 5. And then she just talks about how, once again, we got to go save him. But then she says how it reminds us a lot of Sarah, whose soul is also lost. And then she says, a coffer of souls won't save Sarah. I guess you got to figure that out for yourself. And then Lightning says, I don't need anybody's help, especially not yours. Which, in the regular course of events, I didn't find to be an interesting line of dialogue, but it's actually very thematically important that Lightning is rejecting someone's help. And also that saving Sarah is a bigger deal than just, you'll do that when the game's done. So, hold on to that brain, all right? Because I hadn't thought about it till earlier today when I was writing this part of the notes. We head back to Saz, but we in Hope talk about how we're worried about getting our hopes up. This is all we have left to save Saz. This is better work, right? So then we get back to Saz. There is a scene that is really, it's just a dumb scene. So we give Saz the Coffer of Souls, and he's like, oh my god, I've been searching for these for 500 years. I never was able to find them. And we're like, it wasn't that hard. So we put all the pieces of Daj's soul inside of the coffer, and then he grabs the coffer, and he's kind of like, all right. He tries to open it, and he can't open it, and then he kind of points it at Daj, and it's not working. And then Sonic gets really angry. He's like, come on, Daj. And he's like, come on, you stupid coffer. And he's not acting like himself, you know? Someone needs to give him the Snickers because he's not himself when he's hungry. And we just love talking about advertising campaigns for products, don't we?
We really do.
He's mad. He's yelling. He's not a very pleasant person at all. And Lumina kind of tells him off. And she's like, maybe Daj won't come back because you're so mad, because you're so unpleasant in a sense. Also, sorry, I should have said this earlier when we first visited Saz. The Chocobo chick wasn't there, and Chocobo chick's been there all along. Chocobo chick wasn't there, and then this time when we get back, Chocobo chick is there, and we're like, oh, it wasn't here before, and Saz is like, yeah, it's crazy, right? Chocolina just showed up all of a sudden, and we're like, Choco, what now? And he's like, don't worry about it. I'll tell you later. Now, if we read the data log from last time, know, from literally the previous game, that Chocolina is Choco Chick from the future. But if you don't read the data logs, you don't know that. Okay, so pretend like we don't know that. It's going to be a big twist coming up in a second.
I didn't know that from the data logs the last game, and I read a lot of the data logs. I flipped my shit because the Chocobo Chick entry at the very beginning of the game for Final Fantasy XIII says, the chick has no name, as voicing the true identity of the animal might trigger ripples of destiny across Cocoon and cause a hurricane in Eden. Either that or Saz just hasn't thought of one yet. So
I forgot about that.
I was flipping my shit because it's been this joke since the beginning of the game that Chocobo Chick was the most important character in the game, and turns out maybe she is.
We openly discussed it in one of our episodes about how
I don't remember this at all. So
no.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. This was a conversation I had with someone not on this podcast who had read more of the data log than I had. And they were like, yeah, duh, Chocobo Lena is Chocobo Chick from the future. It says that in FF13-2, and I was like, what? I apologize. I thought that had happened on this cast. Yeah. So anyway, if you're most of us, this is a big twist. So yeah, so we're like, what the fuck, right? Anyway, Saz is super angry, and then we realize that he Lightning agrees eventually. Lightning is like, seriously, you're scowling all the time. It's like you want to scream at someone. And then he eventually realizes that what we're saying is true, even if it's stupid. He's like, yeah, I used to be different, I used to be able to smile in any situation, but after all the years, I guess I just went crazy. I can't imagine how this must look to Daj, right? And then he and Chocolina, the Chocobo, not the hot girl, they play a cute little game. It's actually a really sweet little scene. He picks up a little model airplane and is like, flyers, start your engines, and then the with the toy plane and the Chocobo, they pretend to race, like you do with a little kid. So they're racing around the room, And it's not really working because he keeps interrupting himself every 2 seconds to be like, Dodge, do you see this? Dodge, look, Dodge, we're having fun, Dodge. It's like, bro, you're not having fun. You're pretending to have fun. But then the little Chocobo chick accidentally like bumps into something and falls into Saz's hands and looks like he's hurt. And Saz is like, oh no, and forgets about the game and about being angry and is genuinely concerned about this Chocobo chick that he loves that might be injured. That's what suddenly causes Dodge to start glowing. And then Dodge comes back. It's really underwritten, but shit with dads and sons is always really touching, so it's a very touching scene. We learned that Dodge hid his heart away because he was scared of what happened to his dad. Shit, I was going to do something else here. So all that foreshadowing with Lumina about how something was up, no, there wasn't. She gave us a coffer of souls. It worked. That's it. Thanks, Lumina. You helped us out here. Afterward, we're outside, and we're talking with Lumina, and again, talking about the whole, like, Dash hid his heart away thing. That's an important thematic thing that actually matters. You'll hear it again later today. Then Lumina says, even if you have the best intentions, it doesn't mean people will understand you. And then she says it reminds her of Lightning and Sarah. And Lightning says, I don't care if Sarah understands what I'm trying to do. I'll save her, even if she hates me for it. So the reason why this smile is resonant, I actually forgot to write this down in my notes. I just saw it in my own head. The thing about Dodge is, Dodge was trying to save... Saz was trying to save Dodge, right? But he couldn't save his son until he first saved himself. Because unless he saves himself, his son's heart will be closed off to him. So that's what makes this actually matter, even though it's mostly dumb. That's it. That's Quest 5. Good job, everybody. So now, we've completed the quest. We've gotten enough soul juice to extend the clock all the way to 13 days and progress to the end of the game. However, what the actual conflict is will be developed pretty soon. We already know there's a little bit of stuff with the order or whatnot. So anyway, here's a bunch of cutscenes. Question, did we already talk about the one about how she's like, where Sarah actually shows up and is like, I've waited so long to see you?
I think you started to talk about it, and we were like, we didn't see that one. Because
of the non-linear nature of this game, I'm a little worried. We already talked about this on a previous episode, but we'll talk about it again. Okay, so after lots of foreshadowing, Sarah actually shows up at the end of day 5 when we get back to the Ark, for real. She's like, I've waited so long to see you. And she's like, and Light's like, I feel the same. And then Sarah kind of laughs and is like, classic Lightning, your face doesn't even register that you're happy to see me. But that's just how you've always been. Ever since we were kids, you know, you are happy to see me, you just aren't expressing it. Then she says to Light, she says, just promise that when everything's over, you'll smile for me. And then she disappears. But afterward, Lightning monologues to herself. She's like, no, I wasn't actually hiding my happiness behind a mask. I didn't feel anything. My sister that I've been fighting for all along showed up, and I felt literally nothing. All the love that I feel for Sarah, that should be there, has vanished from my heart. And it's like, damn, that's concerning. At the end of day 6, nothing happens. At the end of day 7, nothing happened on the way in, aka going back to the Ark. But on the way going back down to Earth, we get trapped in the Lumina Zone again. As usual, for this point in the game, Lightning is mostly just annoyed. She's like, ugh, you again? Lumina says she's about to learn us some true shit. She reminds us how we woke up and heard God's voice in our head saying to be the savior, but, as has been alluded to, something was, quote, gone from Lightning's heart. Like a literal piece of it was missing. Something very important that she can't remember. Well, guess what, folks? That shit is about to get literal. We then see the cutscene at the end of the DLC from the last game. If we recall, Lightning was super sad about Sarah dying, so she decided to turn herself into a crystal forever. She holds Sarah's memory of, and this is me paraphrasing her, what she says at the end of the previous game. She's like, Sarah, I hold your memory in my heart and will carry that memory to atone for my sins. But that memory will also be my hope that one day you might return. Well, here's the thing. In a bit of metaphysical elision, this means that Lightning was keeping Sarah's literal soul in her crystalline heart. She wasn't keeping her memory alive. She was literally having her soul inside of her. Those of you listening casually might find this ridiculous and bizarre, but we've been playing these games for like a goddamn year, so now I've developed a powerful brain that thinks that this is completely normal and makes sense.
Yes.
So when Light woke up and a piece of her was missing, it was literally Sarah's actual soul. Sarah's soul was literally, not metaphorically, living inside of Lightning's own heart, and now it's gone. Which means literally Sarah's soul is somewhere else from where it was before. So remember how Bunavelza before was saying, hey, you really want to bring Sarah back. And I'm making use of that. I'm taking advantage of the fact that you want to save Sarah. It's just a lucky coincidence for me. You need Sarah back. I need a savior. Let's do a little tit for tat. No, he took Sarah as a hostage. Sarah was in Lightning's soul, and Bunavelza said, yoink! So it's a lot more sinister than we thought. But it's even worse than that. Lumina says that God is, quote, not so good with the whole, like, humanity, souls, emotions thing. She's like, yeah, he's a higher level being. He doesn't really get human emotions and souls and all that shit that we think is really important. He may have just, after stealing Sarah's soul, he may have just tossed it away into the abyss. We have no idea if he can actually bring her back. Maybe he won't, or maybe he can't. At this point, Lightning says, if he's lying to me, I don't care if he's a god, I'll murder his ass. Lumina is very pleased to hear this, but then she's like, can you really take on a god? Light says, well, I wouldn't bet against me. Which is an incredible fucking line. But then Lightning says that she may have found a way to defeat him. Lightning has a contingency plan that I guess she developed off-screen? Or, more likely, she just thought about it in her brain without sharing with the class. That's been a thing in this game. Lightning's got stuff going on inside of her brain, but she's so stoic that not only does no one else in the game know what she's up to, we the player don't know what she's up to, even though she's our avatar. So she's got something going on, but she's not sure if she wants to do her backup plan yet, because the world is kind of gonna end, and Bunavelza is kind of building a new one. So Lumina says, so you'll play his game as long as it takes to build the new world. And then she says that Lightning will turn on God and make him a pawn in her own game. However, there's one more catch. This would mean betraying hope. Lightning says, that's fine, but it isn't convincing. Or when Lightning says that, it's not convincing. Lumina is like, look around you. Look around you. Have you found out what we're looking for yet? That's right. It's... Fuck. I should have finished this joke. I didn't write this down. That's right. It's Bunavelza. She's like, look, the Ark is a lie. Hope is a lie. Sarah is a lie. Like, all these things that you're seeing are fake. It's not the real Hope. It's not the real Sarah, which, for the record, we don't know that. Then she says, maybe you're a lie, too, to Lightning. And then disappears. This is where I realized my interpretation of the game, which I might talk about later, but it will be really in the weeds. So that was just a lot of bombs that just dropped, and it's totally shifted the vibe of the game, which, again, this vibe shift can happen at any point in the game, depending on how you play it. Like, Lightning is having this big realization about the true nature of her quest, for me, after having completed the entire quest. So, end of day 8. We see Sarah again. She again comments on Light's inability to smile. She says, God, this is a fucking good set of cutscenes. She says to smile, quote, you just have to go back to the days when the future still looked bright. Back before we made all those mistakes. Before we started messing around with gods and foul sea. We thought it was our destiny to fight for the world and the future. But all those battles, those struggles, they didn't mean anything in the end. Lightning says, surely it wasn't all a mistake. Even that journey you went on with Noel, the entire previous game that all of us playing the game found pretty moving. Sarah says, what else would you call it? We risked everything, but in the end, we couldn't save the future, and I died. If that's not a mistake, then what is? Then she says, and I'm skipping a little bit here, but she says, that's why I have to get rid of it, to throw it all away. It didn't mean a thing. It's done and gone. And then after some more talks, the next key line is she says, Bunavelsa is going to make a new world, and we have no regrets, just a clean slate. Light says, if it was a mistake, then it was Lightning's fault for sending her. All Sarah did was try her best. Nothing wrong with that. And then Light says, it didn't turn out like we hoped, but it wasn't a mistake. You tried to do something that was good and right. You must never throw that away. And Sarah can't even take that. Sarah says, maybe, but I don't want to remember it ever again. Which, that really hit. So then Light muses again. Lightning realizes, wait a second. That doesn't seem like how Sarah would act. Like, seeing Sarah like this with no hope at all, just totally doom-pilled in a way that I've very seldom even seen in a video game, that doesn't seem like her. What if what Lumina says is true and this Sarah is fake? But no. She couldn't be fake. It's me. I made her doubt herself through the things that I said. Like, I've got Sarah having a normal one, you know? But now the seed is planted, and now Lightning worries that Sarah is really a fake, even if and maybe even her memories of Sarah are fake. Personal commentary here, I found the scene very weird. I think that if you see your loved one acting in a way that is completely unlike them, in a way that is depressing as hell, the idea that that's actually a fake illusion that's not real, that was made by a bad guy, would be a comforting thought and not worse. Though Kali, my girlfriend, suggested that, remember, Lightning's goal is to save Sarah, so seeing that Sarah is in front of her does let her know that Sarah does still exist somewhere and can be saved. Whereas if Sarah is a fake, that means that we have no guarantee that if the Sarah in front of us is fake, real Sarah may not exist anywhere and may not be savable. Therefore, there's no hope at all. So that makes sense to me. But it was a little bit odd, right? I'm like, I would be more upset by the things you just said if it's really you saying them. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. That scene fucked me up. Next is end of day 10. On the way back, we enter the Lumina zone, and she says, surprise, someone wants to see you. That someone is Yule? Yule shows up and says, there are other people here who want to see you. And then for a moment, all the characters show up. Saz, Noel, Snow, all of Light's loved ones. But then they all disappear. Lumina says they all want to help Light, but she's unreachable. Light says, I don't need help from anyone. And Lumina says, yeah, that's why you can't find Sarah. Yule says that Lightning is the savior and does have to complete her mission, but Sarah's soul is invisible to Lightning. And if Lightning can't see her, she can't save her. Then she says, one human does not have the power to defeat Bunavelsa. To which Light then says, then I'll find another power, something beyond me. Yule says, you cannot save anyone, not even Sarah, not as you are. First, you must save yourself. Another key line from Lumina, quote, you don't know the first thing about your own soul, but you think you can find God himself. She needs to figure her shit out. As Lightning exits the Lumina zone and continues through the portal, Hope is like, hey, are you okay? Light says, I'm fine, angrily. Hope doesn't believe her. So to recap that, just to put a cap on it, because I only included key quotes, this is a huge tectonic shift in the game, because this has literally added a new quest, basically. It's saying, on top of what we thought was our quest, we now have a more important quest, which is that something is wrong with Lightning. She has to go through some personal development before she can do anything. She has to personally save Sarah. It's not just Sarah's going to come back once you're done with your quest. But we're about to have another tectonic shift in the game at the end of day 11. And in case you're curious,
I really like this one because in the game in which you have no party members, the power of friendship is still the key thing that's needed. It still manages to make your party be important, which is really cool, actually.
Yeah, it's really neat. And we're seeing this whole extra fucking thing. I don't know. It's like when you focus so much on achieving your goal, you lose sight of what I would call the human elements. This is actually something me and my friend Ella have talked about a lot. I guess, no, I don't think this is too gossipy to say. Me and her talk about how sometimes when we do too much organizing work, it's like you can see human beings as numbers, and it's good to do so. If you want to change the world, you've got to be able to see things in an objective way. Like, we need to complete XYZ tasks to achieve XYZ goal. But when you focus so much on that, it can literally make it hard to connect with other human beings. And I think that this game is digging into that. So anyway, so now, end of day 11. So Sid is back? Remember Sid from the first game? Sid Reigns? He was that bad general guy who ended up kind of being like an honorable character, sort of like not Emperor Gestal, like General Leo from FF6 or something. I didn't find him a particularly interesting character at all. I found him very boring. Anyway, now he's back. That's cool. So he says, it's not really it is really him, but he's just a puppet. He says he's, quote, the voice of the many, of the countless multitudes who call chaos home. I am the speaker for the dead. He then reminds us of the soul song ritual and says there's a hidden truth to it, which we've been aware of. A truth to chaos. So, up until now, chaos has just been this malign force, this very, very bad thing. It sucks. It took over the world. Shit's getting destroyed. Chaos bad. Hope good. Also, there's been a little bit of stuff about how maybe chaos resides in human souls, but it's like a darkness in our souls, right? He says chaos will drown this world, but is also the key to our humanity. He then says, when a man dies, his soul melts into the chaos, but the idea of him survives intact. Then he is reborn. We all have an unseen power, the chaos in our hearts. So we were aware that death and reincarnation was a thing, but it wasn't expressed in these terms. So human hearts are literally made of chaos. And the shape, I really like the idea, for the record, the idea or shape, not their soul, their consciousness, but their idea and shape. The idea or shape of that chaos remains in the sea of chaos. Long story short, they can be reborn in the new world, but they have, I just skipped over the most important part. The dead people can be reborn in the new world. The chaos can be reformed into new bodies in the new world. That has not been said before. Up until now, it's been, we need to save all the people who are living. Now we're learning that all the dead who are in the Sea of Chaos can be reborn in the new world if they are guided there by the priestess, aka Vanille. Vanille has so this is the secret of the ritual, which I gotta say, I didn't see it coming. I thought it was something much more obvious than this. Vanille has the power to bring salvation to the dead, but the Order has kept this from her. The Soul Song will shepherd the new world. It'll bring everyone to a new world, but as we said earlier, it will destroy all of the dead souls residing in chaos, or dead souls that we learn now are actually made of chaos, and will make everyone living forget they ever existed. So now we have another quest. Lightning needs to stop Vanille from doing it, and also let Vanille know what her real power is. So again, our quest has shifted. Our quest is now, don't just stop the souls from being destroyed, but shepherd them all into the new world. Then Rain says, if you answer our prayer, the prayer of the dead, it will mean defying Bunavelza. Then I think he disappears, and we talk with Lumina or something. So then Lightning says, Reigns fought for humanity, and he was killed for it. But the spirit that drove him to stand up to the tyranny of the gods didn't die. Chaos unites humanity, and it has nearly limitless potential and is more powerful than God. But it's a power that God cannot see. And Lightning being God, having godlike power, cannot see it. Lumina says, if you want to make this power yours, you must have the help of those who are inside it. So Lightning needs the power of all of the dead souls, but because she hasn't fixed her shit, she can't. They're trying to reach out to her, but they can't connect. Then Lumina says, you know whose soul you have to find. With the chaos, anything is possible. Find the invisible bonds that unite us across life and death. Do that, and you will have all the power you need. So again, we've now realized that Lightning's goal to find Sarah is not just her own personal goal. If Lightning can't find Sarah, she can't save the entire world, basically. She has to... I don't know what's going to happen in the last part of this game. I don't know what the final dungeon is, but it seems like we have to literally journey into the chaos, somehow find the little speck of it that is Sarah's soul. And in order to do that, we have to listen. We have to be able to hear Sarah crying out to us, which we can't currently do. Afterward, Lightning muses to herself. She says, I reach out with every fiber of being, but is it enough? She's talking to Sarah. Like she's musing to Sarah that she's imagining, not like literally talking to her on a phone. She says, can I do more? She says, if I throw myself into the abyss, if I cry out to you, will you hear me? At the end of day 12, something special happens. So end of day 12, right? Day 13 is the final day. That's it. At the end of day 12, the flower, if we've completed somewhere around 40, 45 side quests, the exact number isn't really clear if you've collected enough soul juice, the flower completely blooms. And inside is this weird shiny orb. And we see the, quote, true light of Yggdrasil. And with the true light of Yggdrasil, we've earned an extra day. That's right. This game doesn't have 13 days. It has 14. It doesn't really matter, but Lightning asks how this could possibly fucking happen, and Hope explains it, and it's hilarious, actually. Remember all that stupid shit about how the world used to have 13 hours on the clock, and now there's only 12, and we just thought, like, okay, fine, why does that matter? That's stupid. Well, turns out that if you think about it, 13 times 2 is 26. There's 26 hours in a day. That means each day is 2 hours shorter than it used to be. Well, guess what? We have 13 days that this game takes place in. We've had 12 days so far, right? Because there's only 12 days so far. Well, guess what? If we're collecting 2 extra hours each day that aren't used, and there's 12 days of gameplay, 12 times 2 is 24. So all those unused hours that got shaved off have formed into a whole extra day. It's really stupid, but it's hilarious that they gave an explanation. They could have just said, yeah, you did such a good job of collecting souls that you have another day now. But instead, they give you this they decided they needed to bring math into it. So yeah, there's an extra day. So now the final day is the 14th day. And the 13th day, what can we do? There's an extra bonus dungeon. We can go to it. But I'm going to explain it next time. Also, whether you do the bonus dungeon or not, at the very end of the 13th or 14th day, you get a final scene with Hope. But I've decided... Okay, we'll talk about it. So, this is the final cutscene before the final shit of the game happens. Forget what day it is, this happens at some point, okay? Right before the final dungeon. You're about to go do it, and Hope shows up. And he says, hey, Lightning, when we save everyone, what about my soul? What'll happen to me? And he says that before we go back to the Ark. After we get to the Ark, we end up in the Lumina Zone again, and Hope shows up. Hope shows up. Remember, he can't go there. God can't go there, but Hope's there now. And he says he's come to say goodbye. He's completed his job, and God doesn't need him anymore, so he's going to disappear. God, quote, doesn't like loose ends. Hope says, this is the plan all along, but it's harder than he expected. Hope encourages us. He says, you gotta save Vanille, and you gotta save Sarah. But once again, Lightning can't feel Sarah. She can't find her to save her soul. Hope says, Sarah's been watching over us the whole time, and when we make the right choice, she'll find her again. Lightning says, the right choice? Tough call for someone who can't stop repeating past mistakes. Hope believes in us, but Lightning clearly does not. Hope says, it doesn't matter how many times you fail if you succeed in the end. Lightning apologizes for not trusting Hope earlier and hiding everything from him. You know, the whole time it's like, oh, we can't tell Hope he's the mouthpiece of God. She says, I'm sorry about that. Hope's like, no, you totally made the right call. Like, I was being controlled. I was a puppet of Bunavelza. I think it's clear here that he did have, like, consciousness. Like, he wasn't, like, a mindless puppet, but he was having, like, literally being forced to do what he was doing. He didn't have free will, you could say, even if he may have had consciousness. So he's like, yeah, I had to do this. If you had told me any of this stuff, I would have told Bunavelza, like, absolutely. So you did the right thing. But now that I've completed my mission for God, I've been, like, released and am my full real self at this final moment. Then he reminisces and remembers when he and Lightning first fought together. Lightning had said to Hope, keep your eyes front, I'll watch the rear. He says that she's done that ever since, and as long as she was with him, he never feared anything, and now he doesn't. He then disappears. Presumably, his soul has been eradicated. Lightning is in the Ark alone. She thinks of Hope and Sarah and Vanille. She'll save all of them. Then Mog shows up, and Mog has a message for us. I did not write down in my note that the message is from Hope, so I think we can assume that the game does not tell us that this message is from Hope, even though we can assume that it is using literary interpretation skills. The message is, quote, no matter what happens, keep your eyes front. And that's it. As soon as we get through that, we either have already done the extra dungeon, or we're not going to because we didn't unlock it, and we're going on to the end of the game. I want to briefly mention that I think that this whole game is all about keeping your eyes at front and at back at the same time, because you can't move forward until you come to terms with the past. Basically, is what this game's about. In a lot of ways, so I like it. Yeah, so that is. I apologize if some of that was a little bit confusing. I do think it's largely not my fault. It is this game's weird structure. But we've done every single thing except for two things. One is the extra bonus dungeon. Yes, it does have plot. I'll tell y'all next time. It's cool. And secondly, the actual ending of the game. That's it. Let's listen to some music. I don't know what. And then move on to the Mim Moms.
Dope. So I read a whole lot of the data log in last game, so I looked it up to see what the person's talking about. It's not a data log, it's a fragment, and it's
right. Yeah, the fragments have all the more deep lore.
Yeah, and it's a fragment called Choco Chick Down, and you get it by finding a letter from Daj is the object that gets you the fragment. And it says, Daddy went away for a while. He said he was going to help Sarah and her friends. Let's do it, Daddy. I want to help too. Hey, remember my daddy's chocobo chick? Well, it's a girl, so I've decided to call her Chocolina. Cool, huh? The rest of the data log, because I control F'd on this entire document to see anything, it talks about the chocobo chick being important, and it talks about Chocolina being important, and it only conflates the two in this one tiny little thing.
Yeah, so it technically just gives you the pieces to put it together.
Yeah, like one of the other fragments is about Mog and how Mog came to be, because Moogles weren't real in the first game, remember? And it's and it was the Chocobo chick showed up in the middle, like in the space between dungeons, and asked Mog, "Are you Mog or are you a Moogle?" And Mog says, "I'm Mog, of course." And she's like, "Cool," and disappears. So the Chocobo chick having dimensional jumping powers and like helping Mog come into existence, etc., is kind of weird. So if I would have read it closer and not just thought it was a joke, I might have been able to piece it together. But it does,
Mog's
in fact,
like, am I a Mog or am I a Moogle? Well, I'm a Moogle of a Mog. or he's a very Moggly Moogle.
Yeah.
I would sing that song from the Muppets 2009, but I don't actually remember the melody of it. So
Me neither.
I have a question for y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Think back to Final Fantasy XIII, and this is to some extent a genuine question. Is boundless optimism actually Saz's defining character trait? Because they sure act like it is.
I think so. Yes, he gets down for sure during extreme moments of crisis, mostly regarding his son, but he always bounces back, and he always lightens the mood. Like literally, other than the scene where he almost kills himself, his big dramatic scene, that did break him, but first of all, briefly, and also not completely. And other time something shit happens, he complains constantly. But I actually do think so. Though perhaps he is definitely being Flandersized though by this point in the game, in the series, absolutely.
Yes, well, I mean, he was barely in the previous game, and there was some DLC that was barely anything for him. Now he's barely in this game, and he was one of the best characters in the first game, and I'm just not happy with
It's really a shame
how they've used him. I want to say another thing about it. In the Goofy scene where they've collected all the soul fragments, they use the phrase scary face a few times to describe him. And is it just me, or is that a phrase that shows up a lot in from Japanese translated media?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know if you were going there. I thought you were going to be like, isn't it kind of racist that it's the scary black man?
Oh no.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, they're doing they're doing tropes, is what I thought to myself.
I'm just wondering if that's like a common phrase in Japanese. Like if someone's being real angry, you say they have a scary face.
Yeah, because it's not common over here, and it's in a lot of Japanese media, so it must be like an idiom or turn of phrase or something.
Yeah, I was wondering if I was imagining that.
But so I looked up Saz to see if he was cheerful, and similar to, is this a Japanese thing? So Saz has all of the jokes, and all of the jokes are about how he hates this, and if you read it at face value, that's not very cheerful. But because he has the jokes, I wonder if that's more of a like in Japan sort of thing. Like the weird thing, it's never funny to me, and I don't understand why it's huge. But Japanese stand-up is always two people. One of them says all the jokes, and one of them just is the butt of the jokes, and that's comedy. That's how it works in Japan. And so I wonder if him having all of the jokes and he's like, oh, I hate this, is more of like is more jokey in Japan, and that's why he's so carefree and laughter and optimism and stuff like that. And though over here it's Dante from Clerks is his characterization. He's not even supposed to be here today. Vibe is what I get from him. But
I will say he does put on a brave face for Dodge and the little we see of the two of them, and we see more of this for Vanille at one point, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah. Like when they go to the theme
Sunlit
park
Waterscape.
place.
Oh no,
Sunlit Waterscape. I think he's sort of being down, but when they go to Nautilus, I think it's called.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know. It's hard to remember. It was a long time ago. I can barely remember what happened with what we're discussing this week.
It was 500 years ago.
This series has been a hell of a journey. And not just because it took a long time for us to get through it, like in real world time, but also because like you really end in a very different place than you started. In a lot of ways. Characters, themes, basic gameplay mechanics, basic lore facts.
Yeah. Like listening to everything you were saying today, I was just like, man, this series, like from the end of Final Fantasy XIII to the beginning of Final Fantasy XIII 2, just got way more abstract.
Yeah, I really really love it. I know it's
don't.
complex. I know I know you don't. There's I'm not gonna go. The only way I can talk about my read of this game is to literally talk for a straight hour, which I'm not going to. Although, as y'all know, because I've talked to y'all about it, I might make a bonus episode about it. But I will say one thing that's really neat. If you think about it for a second, in the previous game, the good guys were trying to build a new world before the bad thing happened. In a sense, it was sort of a world that cannot exist forever. It was an untenable state, right? It was a contradictory existence, and they had to build a new world, not to destroy the old world, but before things fell apart, right? And this game, at first I felt it was a little bit of a repeat of the concept, though it's got a different vibe to it. But A, it's a very different vibe, and B, it's like you jumped out of the frying pan into the fire kind of thing. It's like you went from a pretty bad untenable state to an even more untenable state. But here's the difference. In the previous game, the good guys were trying to build a new world before the bad thing happened. In this game, the good guys are working with the bad guys to build the new world because they can't do it alone. Which is a really neat fundamental contradiction. It's like, no, like, we are strictly opposed to Bunavelza, but Bunavelza is our only hope at proceeding into the new world. Maybe there will be a twist where that was all a lie too, but so far I don't think so. I think it's like, we are going to go into the new world that Bunavelza is building, right? And that's very, very interesting. And I do read it in my interpretation of the series as very, very political. And in a lot of political situations, there are basically, oftentimes you have to work together with people who are fundamentally opposed to you. And there's a lot of times when that's a bad thing, you should never do it. But it's also true that there are times when saying we should never ever do this is frankly just naive. And you see that. You see that going back to, and don't, I promise we'll wrap this up very soon. In the Second International back in the late 1800s, that was like their fundamental thing was like, no, we'll, like this fucking like socialists and stuff. It's like, no, we'll work with liberals anytime we agree on something, but we will always maintain what you call class independence. We are independent of them. We are not permanently allied with you. We have fundamentally different goals, and eventually winning the world we want is going to make you our enemies. However, if we both think that maybe women should be allowed to have abortions, or if we both think that that the Kaiser, should allow that maybe we should have a parliament in Germany, we will fight together for it. So it is a fundamental contradiction that you can't, but saying no, we just won't do it. Fuck Bunavelza, let's kill him on day 2. That's also the wrong answer.
Yeah.
So working through these contradictions is honestly very, very complex and interesting, and that's something you didn't see in the previous games. So, it is all purely an abstract thematic land. But I don't know. It's a fucking weird. What a weird series.
It's great. And our first season of LongCast, there were 3 games because there were 3 different martial arts tournaments that we had to get through. And this one is 3 games because it's a fucking journey. And I did not expect the world I was buckled into, stumbling through that first cutscene until I could read the data log, would be this one. And I am not mad.
Neither did the writers or designers.
Very true.
If we're doing any mid-mom type stuff, I have only one thing I'm going to share, and it's not actually a memorable moment. It's actually more important plot shit that was hidden in a side quest that I thought was important enough to share. So there's a side quest where, remember how way back at the beginning of this game, a bunch of girls were getting murdered, and we had to stop them? Well, it turns out that their ghosts have been showing up, and this is just one of the side quests that you can do. I spent the whole game trying to find them and never could. And it wasn't until I gave up and was just running around trying to make sure I got all the latest swords and stuff that I happened to see one. And I talked to them. And it turns out they dropped some hot knowledge from Beyond the Grave. A little bit more lore here. Turns out that, again, this was kind of implied but not really said in the way that I understood it. Etro is the goddess of the dead. But it's better to say that Etro is the goddess of the concept of death, and that includes the concept of reincarnation. So the game had told us that Etro's dead, and the game had told us that in that the quest in the Dead Dunes, that like dead souls can't be reborn. But it wasn't really said those are the same thing. So what does that mean? That means when Bunavelza makes a new world, there's still not going to be reincarnation of souls. The fundamental problem of this world that souls, that basically that humankind is on permadeath, basically, that once people die, they will never come back and new people can't be born. It's like a children of men situation. That's not going to be fixed because Etro's dead. And they kind of say like, yeah, in addition to all the other problems we got to fix, we also need to fix this one. And the ghost kind of implies that lightning needs to fix it, almost like implying that like lightning needs to obtain goddess-like Etro powers and become the new goddess of the dead. And she's like, that's a bit of a tall order. Yeah, it doesn't resolve or anything, but I think that's pretty important, and we'll see what happens with that.
That's really cool.
I did that and forgot about it because I did it like on day 5 or something.
Makes sense, because it's been available that whole time. It's a 1-star quest. I just, for some reason, didn't manage to run into that character until now.
It's really funny how there's so much made of this time limit, and if you don't beat the game of the time limit, you can like restart with some of your stuff from before and everything. But I beat all the main story quests and 50 side quests by I think day 7. So
yeah, I mean, it's mostly just because chronostasis is just super abusable.
I feel like I wasn't even abusing it that much, but maybe I was. I don't know.
Eventually, I got to the point where I mentioned in the other versions, in the other podcast, that I'd become obsessed with this game and I put 60 hours into it because I find the game's systems fascinatingly fun. When I'm sitting there grinding to try and get 1 million of something, or trying to kill all of a certain enemy because I need to extinct them, because I feel like getting like a sword that they drop or something after you defeat the final one, or the last one, I would like warp to an area at 6 a.m., play the game for 3 hours, and it's still 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Because they've been dropping enough EP that I'm just looping it forever. And I'm just like, oh. At some point I was like, I need to stop playing this game. Both for the fact that we have a podcast to talk about, and also I need to do something else with my life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree. The time limit, on one hand, it's cool that it doesn't matter, because maybe some people aren't into it, and it might be frustrating for some people. On the other hand, kind of would be nice if it actually mattered.
Yeah. Anything else we need to talk about before we wrap this up?
I felt bad just going and sleeping at an inn for 4 or 5 days. I felt like I really should be saving more people's souls, but I've done.
Eventually, it gets pretty hard.
I've saved 50 people. That's a lot.
That's true.
Well, eventually, it gets pretty
How
hard.
many
Like
people could there be?
I literally didn't give up and decide, fuck it, I'm just going to get into the game until like I had done every single quest in every single area except for like 5 of them in Luxurian, because I could not fucking figure them out. It's like, oh, this little girl wants this like flower or something, and I'm just like, I have no idea where to go. I'm not going to look up a guide, so I left those dead. But like, yeah, it's just like we saved so many people, and even I only that's how much I did. I only got to like 60. So you did like almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I did none of them because I watched the movie for this one, because I stopped playing like 3 episodes ago.
That's right. Make sure to watch the movie. Does the movie include the stuff in the bonus dungeon?
I don't know.
Okay. Make sure to watch it, because it's not a lot, but it's just some more lore-based bombshells that are fucking weird.
I feel they probably will. They just haven't done it yet. Just they want it to be like the last thing, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, now for the last thing that we do every episode, where I tell you that if you want to check us out on the web, you can do so at www.rpgbook.club, where you can donate to help us keep the lights on, pay for the cost to buy video games. We got lucky that right before we switched games, every single time this game went on Game Pass. That doesn't usually happen. So if you'd like to help us donate to all of that, you can. Any and all donations will go towards unlocking more of these bonus seasons. It doesn't feel like this is a bonus season because people keep making them, making the goals before we can finish them. But at this point, we're still technically can have a break after next week. Hopefully.
Thank God.
Donate a whole bunch so that we play the next one, but give it a couple of weeks.
Yeah, give it a couple of weeks. But
the next one is Metal Gear Solid, and even I am saying I don't want to play that game right now.
Yeah, give us a break. But if like every time we ask people to not donate, you want to spite donate, you can do so by signing up for one of our membership tiers, or doing a one-off donation if you like. But the membership tiers have the $1 a month, or a one-off donation will get you access to the book club No Kaseki episodes a month before everybody else. It also gives you a green nickname in the Discord if you join the Discord. And it lets you vote on the next game that we play on the main podcast. We have a vote coming up relatively soon, like in the next 3 or 4 weeks there. So you have plenty of time to get in your donation so that you can make those votes. If you level up your membership to the $5 a month tier, you get a shout out at the end of every episode, much like this. Shout outs to AA Ron 524, Cerebral Wind, Anthony Lerma, Vimk, Jfro Prime, Eli Bergmoss, Doho, and Tuxedo Ken. And if you want to then level up once more, you can donate at the $20 a month tier, where we will not only read out your name, but also give a shout out to whatever you want. So if you have a Twitch stream you're trying to grow, if you want your YouTube channel, your Twitter, whatever, we'll give you a shout out for that. Our current and only luminary is not online. He is a dentist, so his shout out is instead for your own mouth, and he tells you to brush your teeth twice a day, most importantly, the time before you go to bed. So that's Carr, by the way. I forgot to say his name. So shout outs to Carr, shout outs to all of our members, and shout outs to
your mouths.
And shout outs to your mouth. Another way that you can support the podcast is by supporting me. I don't know if you were listening to the main episodes or not, but my wife recently had a seizure. She had a blood clot in her brain with some hemorrhaging. She was in the ICU for 8 days, and that is a very expensive hospital bill. We have a GoFundMe set up. It's been really successful so far, which is awesome. We only have, I think last time I checked, it was like $1,570 left to pay, which is awesome. Like, thanks everybody. But if you yourself would like to donate, you can do so at the link in the description. Donate, help me pay off the fact that my wife didn't die this year. So thanks everyone for that. But for RPG Book Club Longcast, I have been Sam Allman.
I'm David Bernard Hauk.
And I'm Matty Face Clevin.
Toodaloo, folks.
Goodbye.
Oh, wait. We could do... What did Hope say? What was Hope's goodbye note from Mog? Like, keep the rear... Look at my ass. What did he say?
it was keep your eyes in front, I'll watch the rear.
Yeah, keep your eyes in front, I'll watch the rear.
Keep your eyes in front, I'll watch your rear.
Yeah.
He says to Lightning. Not wrong.
Not wrong at all. Right,
so are we staying on our second to last episode of the series? We are committing to a sign-off?
Yes.